Dear friends, welcome to Threefold Mankind, and today's presentation number 5 from Florian, presentation which is relates to topic of Holy Grail. So we all know Florian. He serves 4 decades as vice chairman of the Anthroposophical Society in Hawaii. He was one of founding members of Kahumana farm and community uh, on island of Oahu. So many talents, and he is an organic architect. Please stop in Kahumana and check his buildings. So, dear Florian, thank you so much for your time and joining us. So, uh, if you're ready, it's over to you.
Thank you, Andre. And thank you for also the participants who've taking the time to enter into this deep subject that we can't encompass in any one presentation. And so we have the opportunity with these 7 presentations to have uh, this building on top of what was given before. I had, aside from some tree limbs coming down at the Anthroposophical Society here in Honolulu, which we kind of attended to, uh, my computer kind of got a surge, even though it has a surge protector, somehow with the electrical outage we had for some time, it kind of made my computer kind of die. And my son was trying to help me. He thought it was the power supply. We changed that, turned out it wasn't. So I just last night got a new computer. I'm on my laptop here, but I usually prepare on that workstation. But, anyways, that's all part of the chaotic times we live in. Rudolf Steiner indicated that the meteorological events take place between the cosmic forces, which have more of a harmonious influence, the world of the stars, and then the interior of the earth. Uh, these meteorological weather events take place within that polarity. And in this particular time, due to materialism being a powerful influence in our geopolitical, social, cultural life, and also nationalism, racism being in an upsurge, we're really evoking these interior layers of the earth. And the Ahrimanic forces are associated, according to this Rosicrucian understanding of the interior of the earth, with the 6th layer where volcanism comes from, and that human beings can excite that layer. And we've had quite a few events in terms of South America. We've had recently 2 kind of earth-shaking events that have taken their toll on large numbers of people who are suffering. That's aside from the wars that are underway. And so we all have something to do with what kind of weather we're getting, even though it may be homeopathic in a certain respect. But it's kind of a reflection of where humanity is in its evolutionary path right now, where the adversarial forces are particularly strong. And we need something to set against those. And that's really what the Grail is all about. So let me switch over to a slides. I'm once again beginning with the red window. Can you see the slide at the moment?
Yes, all perfect. Thank you.
Okay. So the red window is in the west, was in the west of the first GOETHEANUM building. They also have a version of it in the second GOETHEANUM, but you would come up the stairs through that west wing, and the stairs went up on both sides, and that stairs raise you up to the back of the seating area. And when you're then looking over those seating area in the larger cupola towards the stage in the east, you have this red window kind of looking with you. You can see this face that is really an enlightened human being who has awakened the chakras. You can see how prominent the throat chakra is there. That's the 16 petal lotus. And this was related to the fact that this is the house of the word, the cultivation of the logos forces in the human being. And when Rudolf Steiner was there at the podium, this micro logos, this Grail sword, was active. The Grail sword is the word sword, unlike the Arthurian knights who had the physical sword. And you have then also these living creatures where you have the wings up above, it's like the eagle, you have the lion and the bull. And in the book of Revelation, between those arises then the sacrificial lamb. That's related to the I am and the ego. On the forehead point of this face in this red window, you have the two petal lotus. Those are like the wings of the eagle. And down below, you have Michael in the heart region doing battle with the dragon. And on the left, you have the human being crossing the threshold, and you have the three beasts down below. Because when you cross the threshold, thinking, feeling, and willing separate. And it's only with the help of the higher self that one can harmonize those three soul forces. And this is one of the important functions of working with the foundation stone meditation, which helps to set the moral compass. And because when we cross the threshold, we're crossing an abyss. And there are dangers lurking in the darkness of the abyss. And the materialism of our time tends to have us descend into these dark depths where the three caricatures of willing, feeling, and thinking, eagle related to thinking, the lion related to feeling, and the bull related to the will or the cow. And then on the right side, you have a human being helped by angels to cross over and get to the other side. So this is really the initiation of humanity. And this building, the first GOETHEANUM, was meant to embody anthroposophia, the wisdom of the human being or humanity. And this rendering of it is related to Goethe's fairy tale, where at the end, the temple that was in the subterranean depths that I spoke of in an earlier presentation rises up through the sacrifice of the green snake. And there's a marriage of the youth and the lily, and a bridge over the river that separated the physical from the spiritual. So at this end of the Goethe's fairy tale, there's kind of this celebratory experience where now that bridge, where in the past the green snake would at noon create a bridge and a few straggling artists could cross, it's now available for humanity to cross. And truth, beauty, and goodness are intimately related. Truth for the thinking, beauty for the feeling, and goodness for the will. This is like the golden triangle that we need to fashion. And this is what then was embodied in that GOETHEANUM, where the wisdom, the truth aspect was manifest through the visual arts. All of the arts brought together. Architecture is an art that allows painting, music, drama, speech, eurythmy. All of these arts can be staged in such a building. So Rudolf Steiner, who was, you could say, the architect of this, had a special capacity, and this was mediated by a replica of the eye of the Jesus Christ being bestowed upon him, at least according to leading anthroposophists. This is from Prokofiev, May Human Beings Hear It. For only when we recognize that spiritually, having stood before the mystery of Golgotha, signified for Rudolf Steiner a real initiation into the Grail mysteries, meaning that out of the most holy chalice, he received into his own eye a replica of the Christ. It allows us to understand that in quite a concrete sense, he could call spiritual science, subsequently founded by him, as a science of the Grail. And that modern initiates, and in the first place, he himself can be designated as initiates of the Grail. In 1913, following the foundation stone laying of the Johannesbau, as the first GOETHEANUM was initially called, in its forms, the thought content of the science of the Grail became visible to external vision for the first time. A thorough contemplation of the forms of this Johannesbau make it increasingly clear that this structure exhibits many features of a modern temple of the Grail. And in past presentations, I've drawn on this conversation that Rudolf Steiner had. This was with Countess Kaiserling at Rudolf Steiner's last Pentecost period. This is actually the 28th conversation. One could call it an esoteric conversation that the Countess Kaiserling had, and this took place at the estate of the Kaiserlings, where the biodynamic lectures were inaugurated. So I'm going to jump to the part, the Grail story, the chemical wedding of Christian Rosenkreutz and the Mithras cult are aware of this castle. This is Countess Kaiserling asking, is it the same sacred building that in the Bible is called the New Jerusalem? Rudolf Steiner, the New Jerusalem of which the Bible speaks is the eternal archetypal image of how it will be in the future. The Grail Castle is the image of how it is now in the spiritual world. Another important insight which has guided my research was provided by Rudolf Steiner in the lecture, The Etherization of the Blood. After describing the esoteric phenomena related to the microcosmic dimension of the etherization of the blood, which involves Grail secrets related to the pineal gland, Steiner drew attention, quote, to the corresponding phenomena in the macrocosm, and went on to say that this corresponding phenomena can be described today as the result of the most scrupulously careful occult investigations of recent years undertaken by individuals among genuine Rosicrucians. This led me to ask where the macrocosmic equivalent of the pineal gland is to be found. This eventually led me to the understanding that the macrocosmic organ is located at the center of the earth. So I've touched on this before, and I'll get into it a little more deeply this time. In the year after the burning of the GOETHEANUM, in the final day of that Christmas Foundation meeting, Rudolf Steiner spoke of the connection between this GOETHEANUM building and the fire that broke out there and the temple of Ephesus. My dear friends, may this link our hearts to the old GOETHEANUM, which we had consigned to the elements. May it link our hearts also to the spirit, to the soul of the GOETHEANUM. With this vow before, whatever is best within our being, we want to live on not only into the new year in strength of deed, bearing the spirit, leading the soul. We want to live on into the new cosmic new year. So he speaks here of the building having a soul and spirit. And when we enter into the lectures that Steiner gave in close connection as evening lectures with the Christmas Foundation meeting, the first one started at Christmas Eve. He then shows how when this building of Ephesus was burned, which he relates to the envy of the gods, it was carried up into the soul spiritual world, and it was impressed into the Akashic record. And that later Aristotle and Alexander were able to read that Akashic record and bring down what was then embodied in Aristotelian wisdom and carried into not only Greece, but the surrounding region by Alexander's campaigns, involved this metamorphosis of the impulse of Ephesus In the case of the GOETHEANUM, he spoke of the jealousy of men. This is a curtain imagination that Rudolf Steiner had painted by Hermann Linde, who also did a large amount of the paintings in the big cupola, as well as some of the others. And he did, I think it's like 12 images related to Goethe's fairy tale that Rudolf Steiner asked him to paint. And he was among several people who died, you could say, out of the soul suffering as a consequence of this burning of this beautiful building that he put so much of his love and effort into. So here we see the river in between the two worlds, and we see the GOETHEANUM building embodied as this temple that rises up, and we see the rose cross shedding its light down. And this really speaks of how a Rosicrucian temple was very much involved. We can recall Rudolf Steiner indicating that Christian Rosenkreuz had once incarnated as Hiram Abiff, the architect of Solomon's Temple, and that he was one of the initiators of Rudolf Steiner. So you could say he was a co-creator of this GOETHEANUM building. Von Bemmelen wrote a book about this building and related it to other sacred buildings in the past. And so I've drawn on his work in bringing this forward, where if one creates a cross-section of that first GOETHEANUM, one can relate the big cupola to the cerebrum, the forebrain, and the little cupola to the cerebellum in the back of the human head. And the pineal gland, which plays an important role in these Grail secrets, the microcosmic Grail secrets, is located in that building in a corresponding place to where the podium was located. And behind whoever was at that podium was the sculptural group. So the person speaking there was meant to speak out of that sculptural group that balances Lucifer and Ahriman, that brings forward a new understanding, a threefold understanding of the mystery of good and evil, that is also central to the paintings above in that smaller cupola. So people who were in the seating area in the large, under the large dome, looking up would have seen that image of the representative man balancing the influence of Lucifer and Ahriman. And out of the many imaginations that are incorporated in that dome and the big cupola, the one that was most important for our time, that then was brought down with tremendous will force by Rudolf Steiner, together with Edith Marion, who sculpted this very large sculpture, which was the only major thing that wasn't situated in the building at the time of the fire. In other words, the building had not reached its final conclusion. Now, this kind of says something. I'm trying to relate this building to the human head. So, in this indication given by Rudolf Steiner, the year after the foundation stone was laid, the building was underway. And if one looks from the east to the west in this building, in the first GOETHEANUM, that will reflect what also speaks out of the depths of the cosmos into the evolution of culture. Man will perceive all that I have portrayed if he takes the cupola for his head, which arches over his brain, if he frees the etheric body of the head and looks from within outward, where all I have described will reveal itself to him as a mighty imagination. So this building, we know that the following year at the Christmas Foundation meeting, the foundation stone, which was laid in September 20th, 1913, was metamorphosed into the foundation stone meditation, which was laid into the hearts of the members at that Christmas Foundation meeting. And this dodecahedron is related to the etheric world, just like the other four Platonic solids are related to earth, air, water, and fire. And this has to do with the fifth stage of a sevenfold evolution, which is the future New Jerusalem. And one can see this as a seed that weds microcosm and macrocosm. And on the left at the bottom there, you have imagination that Rudolf Steiner gave to Ita Wegman, showing how he himself and Christian Rosenkreuz were the new guardians to the temple chamber that he worked with in the cognitive ritual work. I've added that rose cross in the middle. And these are then related with the blue and the red stola to the red and the blue blood, to the Yachim and Boaz pillars that stood on either side of the entry porch that led into Solomon's temple. And this is also related to the fourth Rosicrucian seal, where which relates to the entire Earth evolution. And so there's deep mysteries here, although there's kind of an arrow supposed to be at the bottom of that image, where he was kind of indicating, I believe, that when you look at this in the world of imagination, everything is reversed. So you have to reverse it, where the red would be on the left and the blue on the right. So here's another bridge to this microcosmic grail. The soul does not live in the solid part of the organism. It does not enter the solid any more than light penetrates a mirror. Light is thrown back from the mirror. The soul retreats everywhere from the salt. The peculiarity of the soul is that it is deflected from the bones. See drawing red lines. I've included that drawing. We carry our bones within us, empty of soul. The soul is not within them, but is rayed back into the organism. The bones in the skull are really ingeniously arranged. The soul rays out in all directions and is reflected into our inner being. We do not exist within the skull bones, but only as solid physical man. If we would make a comprehensive sketch of the head, we would have to depict the soul as raying out from within the head. See drawings, red lines. If nothing else happened, we would be in a dull, unconscious condition. However, as the soul cannot enter the bones of the skull, it is rayed back into our inner being. Arrows, short red lines. I don't have the color there. And if one looks from east to west in the first GOETHEANUM, that will reflect what also speaks out of the depths of the cosmos into the evolution of culture. That's what I just depicted earlier. So if we take this idea of the head related to the domes of the GOETHEANUM, what is rayed out from that pineal center is reflected back into the paintings in the cupola. Those are imaginations. And here's another part of this picture, the reversal of the will and the new Michaelic yoga of the senses. If we would learn to know the human being, then even as we look outward through the eyes, so we must become able to look back again through the eyes and to hear back again through the ears. All these things taken together, the eyes, the ears, the whole skin as an organ of touch, of warmth, the organ of smell, and so forth. All these together were called in the ancient mysteries the gate or portal to the human being. Indeed, the starting point of initiation was this. Man came to realize that he knew nothing of the human being. Therefore, since he had no self-consciousness of man, he could not be one. He must first look inward through the senses, whereas in ordinary life, he looked only outward. Such was the first stage of initiation in the ancient mysteries. Now, the moment the man learned thus to look inwards, he also experienced himself in pre-earthly life. From then, he knew, I am in my own being of soul and spirit. We may draw it diagrammatically. Here is the head. That's the drawing down below on the left. Man looks outward. Now, instead, he learned to look inward. So if you take the GOETHEANUM and the west being the forehead, and this is where the red window is. The red window is the higher human being, the initiated human being, looking inward and seeing the true human being, the true anthropos. So this window, which I've already spoken about, involves a crossing of the threshold. So in the way that we look at the building, the floor plan, we have 2 times 7 pillars on each side of the seating area. And these are related to the stages of Earth evolution. So everything related to time has a 7-fold character. And the pillars with their sockets down below, and up above, there's a metamorphosis from one pillar to the next. But in the little cupola, you have 2 times 6 pillars, so you have 12. 12 is the related to space, just like 7 to time. And in the Grail mystery, time becomes space. For the higher beings who don't live in our kind of space, they experience what we experience in large periods of time seen together as a spatial image, which is kind of a leap that we need to learn to take when we enter into these mysteries. Here I'm showing the relationship between Solomon's temple and this first GOETHEANUM. So Solomon's temple overlays it, and we see how the little cupola is related to the Holy of Holies in Solomon's temple. That's related to the head of the temple. The middle of the temple was the rhythmic and heart system, where the altar of incense and altar represent prayer, the mood of devotion and reverence. You had the 12 showbread representing the zodiac, cosmic forces, the 7-branch candelabra, which was there representing the planetary spheres. So this altar of incense, this devotion and reverence was to the cosmic divinity, which was also reflected in the 12 tribes that awaited the 13th, the Messiah. And at the entry to the temple are the 2 pillars. And down on the left there, you have a 5-pointed star in relation to that entry. And there are certain Rosicrucian figures where you stand in that star and you say, I think speech, I speak. So this is working with this fashioning of the micro logos. And in the middle, I have that pillar, the 2 pillars standing on the water and the dry land. This is the 4th Rosicrucian seal representing to the Mars and the Mercury stages of the Earth, the descending, incarnating, and the excarnating. In the middle of Atlantean time, we transition from the watery to the dry land. So here I'm trying to show the relationship between the microcosmic mystery of the Grail and the macrocosmic. Obviously, I have too much writing in here, but on the left you have the microcosmic mystery in a lecture question and answers to teachers. Rudolf Steiner was speaking about this lemniscatory form. It's called the Cassini curve. And while he was talking about it, he indicated that this form can be superimposed on the human being, and it then relates to a dynamic process within the human organism that takes place between the one pole where the heart is at the center, that has to do with turning inward, and the other centered in the pineal gland where it's turned outward. There is an article by Dr. Buchholz called the Grail Temple in the Brain, or Grail Temple in the Skull. It's in a Golden Blade article. And there she shows how all the 12 cranial nerves move towards the pineal gland. The pineal gland, according to Rudolf Steiner in various statements, where he talks about how our whole body's constitution in one incarnation, between two incarnations, metamorphoses into the head of the next incarnation. So our present head is a metamorphosis of our body in our last incarnation. And he says in that transition from that past incarnation to the present, the past heart is metamorphosed into the pineal gland. So through this, you can see a direct relationship between the heart and the pineal gland. And in the etherization of the blood, he speaks of how if we turn that pineal gland into a receptive organ, then it can become a chalice that can receive the etherization of the blood that streams up from the heart to the head. And if we penetrate the mystery of Golgotha, then the etherized blood of Christ can accompany that upward stream, and it can be gathered into that pineal Grail vessel, and it can shine out and extend as far as the heart. In Wonders of the World lectures, Steiner speaks of how these auras around the Christ and around saintly human beings was an expression of that aura that's centered in the pineal gland. You also see the Buddha with that kind of a aura around the head. But as was mentioned earlier, in that same etherization of the blood lectures, he says there's a macrocosmic counterpart to this that was carefully investigated by the Rosicrucians. And my thesis here is that this first GOETHEANUM, which I'm placing in the middle there, is the bridge between this microcosmic Grail mystery that can shine in the human head and the macrocosmic counterpart, which has to do with the fact that when the Christ went through the mystery of Golgotha, he entered into the interior of the earth, penetrated those 9 layers that the Rosicrucians talk about, and established his throne at the center of the earth. And since then, the earth has received the sun forces that laid the foundation for the earth to become a future sun, a future New Jerusalem. And with the second coming in the etheric, that etheric aura is expanding out around the earth, which is related to the human head, as we'll see. So just as we can have this golden aura around the head, so too the human beings can work together with the Christ, with the Nathan Jesus being, with the Bodhisattva who's on his way to becoming the Maitreya, and also the Buddha himself, who appeared in the 6th century before Christ, is one of the helpers along this way. So this foundation stone was laid into the ground, and at the bottom right, there is a picture of the calf skin upon which was written some deeply esoteric insights that found their metamorphosis in the foundation stone meditation. but you can see prominent there in larger letters than the rest of it, JN. That's Jesus of Nazareth. So with this metamorphosed foundation stone, the secret related to the Jesus of Nazareth being was laid into the earth as a foundation for the building, but in its metamorphosed form, it was laid into the hearts of the members as part of this foundation stone meditation. This is something I related last time. This is from an esoteric lecture given on December 7th, 1909. In fact, during that year, Steiner gave very important insights into the Grail mysteries at the Easter time of that year, at Midsummer of that year, at Michaelmas of that year, and then leading up to Christmas of that year with this esoteric lesson. And I'm only giving excerpts of it here. You can find it in GA 266-1/1. Meditation awakens spiritual organs in the etheric body. Only when the etheric body has received an impression do the doors open. The sister soul of Adam, preserved from Lucifer, became humanity's higher self. Only when we are united with this higher self are we a whole human being. Through the Nathan Jesus and spiritual economy, this gift became available to humanity. These reproduced etheric bodies are what are waiting for us. The Grail is the soul transformed into a chalice for the higher self. I should form myself into a chalice that can receive this higher self. This higher self has to do with, at the fall of humanity, the danger was that aside from invading the astral body, the Luciferic beings could then penetrate also the etheric. So the hierarchies withheld the higher aspect of the two higher ethers, the tone or musical ether and the life ether. These are associated with the word, with language on the one hand, and on the other, with the meaning of thinking in a higher sense. So until we unite with this being, we're missing the higher members of our own ether body that give us a kinship to the Christ so that we can be a vessel for the Christ, because this Nathan Jesus being is the archetypal vessel. I showed this before and I'm repeating it here, where this same being was the mediator of 3 pre-Christian interventions of the Christ at times when humanity was in danger of going all off course in its evolutionary development. Once in the Lemurian, twice in the Atlantean. You can read about this in Steiner's lecture on the pre-earthly deeds of the Christ. And then for the first time, this being fully incarnated in the physical body of the Nathan Jesus child. And this is really the Grail vessel. This being never partook of the fall, which resulted in the division of the sexes. So this being embodies a state that is prior to puberty. Steiner describes it as a sphere that's sort of virginal and empty in a certain respect. And this is why in the 12th year of this child growing up, a very mature human being who'd undergone many initiation and was, you could say, the representative of the Mother Lodge, of the 13th in the Mother Lodge, the Manu. This was the Solomon Jesus, Zarathustra, who had proclaimed the coming of Christ in his last, prior to the mystery of Golgotha, incarnation in Babylon as Zarathos, and more early incarnations where he spoke of Ahura Mazda, the great aura of the sun. And now we are in a period where the second coming, the most important event of our time, is underway. And there are forces seeking to prevent us from connecting with that mystery, which has to do with this golden aura around the earth. In the 15th century onward, in the consciousness soul period, with the dawning of modern science, we have then materialism taking hold. This was a way of bringing about a kind of twilight of the old gods, as depicted in the Nordic mythology, where the Fenris wolf slays Odin and Thor, and there's a loss of connection with the sun being that was still looked up to in those mysteries. This was meant to happen so that a new clairvoyance related to a higher ego development of the consciousness soul, which is grounded in the physical body. The first stage of that is entering deeply into the sense world. And Parsival's path, he's a forerunner of this consciousness soul phase. And the darkening of the old clairvoyance is kind of a given. Parsival he can't just carry over the fruits of his former incarnation. He has to start as a pure fool on his path and go through a path of suffering. Suffering is always connected with birth, both physical birth as well as higher birth. Suffering is a purging and a purifying that if we go through it during our earthly life rather than waiting for purgatory, we can undergo an initiation during this life. And so the second coming in the etheric, we've been in the birth pangs of that event for some time. The foundation stone meeting, where this secret of the metamorphosed foundation stone was laid into the hearts of the members. With the Christmas conference, anthroposophy has turned from a hitherto earthly affair into a cosmic one. As conference 1923-24, a new covenant between humanity and the spiritual world was established. These are the new mysteries. We human beings are now, together with the angelic hierarchies, those who have died and the elemental beings, consciously co-shaping the future of Earth evolution on the way to the new Jupiter, New Jerusalem. Humanity has begun to enter into the status of a 10th angelic hierarchy. In the foundation stone meditation, the central legacy of the Christmas conference, the first 3 verses relate to the 3 times 3 angelic hierarchies. The 4th verse concerns human beings, the 10th hierarchy, which we're called to become. However, It is not yet certain how many will enter into this new covenant. In the text of the foundation stone meditation, the angelic hierarchies are certainly there for the new covenant, and the elemental beings are also certainly there for it and certainly hear it. Human beings are the sole uncertain factor. Quote, may human beings hear it, unquote. Esoteric current that flowed over the centuries from the Grail movement, the school of Chartres, and the Rosicrucians into anthroposophy. This is quoted by Thomas Meyer. Now, Steiner was asked how to most deeply enter into a connection with the second coming of the Christ in the etheric. And he responded, living meditatively into the cycle of the year. So that image at the upper right, that's related to the meditative verses through the year that Rudolf Steiner gave. So that's one of the ways of living meditatively into this cycle of the year. You hear in the middle verse of the foundation stone, Christ in the encircling round holds sway in the rhythm of all worlds, blessing the soul. I have pointed, as Rudolf Steiner, have pointed to the fact that man, in his rhythm of breathing, 18 per minute, manifests something that is remarkably accord with other processes in the universe. We make 18 respirations per minute, which gives, when calculated for the day, 25,920 repetitions or respirations. And we arrive at the same number when we calculate how many days are contained in a normal life term of 72 years. That also gives about 25,920 days. So that something may be said to exhale our astral body and ego on falling asleep and inhale them again upon waking, always in conformity with the same number rhythm. And again, when we consider how the sun moves, whether apparently or really does not matter, advancing a little each year in what we call the precession of the equinoxes, when we consider the number of years it takes the sun to make this journey around the whole zodiac, once more, we get 25,920 years, the Platonic year. I want to lead you through number to something else. I have to bring before you, take the 18 repetitions per minute, making 1,080 per hour, and in 24 hours, 25,920 respirations. That is, we must multiply 18 by 60 by 24 in order to arrive at 25,920. So anyways, and now take the complete circle described by the precession of the equinoxes and call it not a Platonic year, but a great day of the heavens, a macrocosmic day. How long would one respiration on this scale have to occupy to correspond with the human respiration? Its duration would have to be 18 years, a respiration made by the being corresponding to the macrocosm. This is from Man as a Hieroglyph. So, as I was saying earlier, where we hear that what for us is a cycle of time is experienced as space from the perspective of the hierarchies. They don't live in the space we do on the physical plane. And Steiner indicated that what for the Christ being is 1 year corresponds to 1 day in the life of the human being. So let's keep this in mind when we look to this building, this co-creating of the New Jerusalem, which is epitomized in this seventh seal, this Grail seal, a gift from the Rosicrucians. Ye are the salt of the earth, the thinking of the earth. And in the book of Revelation, you have the 12 gates to the New Jerusalem. Each is of a single pearl. And here, the pearl of great price is the moon. We know that the moon's sphere is where the purgatory stage of the human being takes place. That's where the soul is purified. And once that reaches a certain degree of maturation, the human being can pass through the moon gate into the lower Devachan, the lower heavenly region. The Christ opened these gates in the opposite direction down to the earth, where we also pass through the moon gate. And this is a gift of the Christ being. But the Christ being went through the mystery of Golgotha when the sun was in the sign of Aries. That's why he was referred to as a sacrificial lamb, also in the book of Revelation. And the woman standing on the moon, crowned with the stars, clothed with the sun, becomes his bride. We have to unite with that world soul in order to participate in this cosmic wedding. But there's not only one aspect to the mystery of Golgotha, there's actually 12 gates to the New Jerusalem. In our time, Christ is going through repetition of this mystery of Golgotha, but now it's the gate of Pisces. So that's a Pisces Easter at the vernal equinox. In the next stage of evolution, the Aquarian age, which is the time when humanity will, in this cycle, reach its maturest point, where the foundation will be laid for the next large cycle of 7 stages, which is called the 6th planetary stage. In the book of Revelation, it's the 7 seals. This 6th age is the 6th letter to Philadelphia, where brotherhood will be established, where the Sophian age will be in the foreground, and anthroposophy has to prepare that. So there will be another Aquarian Easter. There's actually 12 Easters, and each of them will give another pearl. But the hierarchies already see those 12 together. And that's the vision that John was given. The Christ will open those other gates into that future earth, that at the end of the whole cycle of Earth evolution will become a future Jupiter, a future sun Earth, a future planet of love. And wisdom is what the heritage of the old moon is, that's being led over to the planet of love. And so here I've brought together these 12 philosophical vantage points, which epitomize this higher stage of thinking that Rudolf Steiner entered into after having shared his philosophy of freedom and shared this 12 philosophical vantage points. And there's 7 soul moods that can conjunct with these stages. These are the pearls. This is thinking of Sophia and wisdom related to its highest level. And we have then a microcosmic day-night rhythm, and the macrocosmic Christ year rhythm that have correspondence with each other. And this is something that can help us to understand that just like we have morning, evening, midday, and midnight, on the macrocosmic level, we have these four gateways related to the four great seasonal festivals that are gateways into the new sun mysteries that the Christ has opened up. And there's geometric form that can help us to relate to this. One of them is called the squaring of the circle. So that square that encompasses the earth that has the same perimeter measurements as that larger circle around it. And that larger circle passes through the middle of the proportion of the moon in relation to the proportion of the earth. And so the New Jerusalem is related to this geometry, which was known in Egyptian times already. The Giza pyramid, the base of the Giza pyramid has these proportions where the base of the Giza pyramid has the proportion of the earth to a circle centered at the peak of that pyramid that touches that earth. If you overlay them, you get this kind of a form. And this is kind of a image of this where you have the moon gates. They form a cross. So in each of the cardinal direction, there are three of the zodiac signs, three of the moons of these 12 moons, which can also be described as pearls. The New Jerusalem has 12 gates, each fashioned from a single pearl. The Easter Grail moon is the pearl of great price. During the present age, the Easter gateway is the Piscean Grail moon. There are 12 such gateways. The Christ renewed the lost spiritual perspective. Time becomes space. The great cosmic eon that unfolds during the course of a Platonic year, 25,900 years, the fullness of time reveals the 12 divine attributes that stream in from the zodiac, the father-mother ground of the universe, and are united in the radiant, selfless love of the 13th, the solar logos, who bestowed this 12-fold gift upon humanity and the earth through the sacrificial deed of the mystery of Golgotha. Prior to becoming the beloved disciple, John, the author of the book of Revelation, was the rich young man Lazarus, who needed to sacrifice his riches and die to himself in order to purchase the pearl of great price. He was then awakened by Christ as the first Christian initiate. In the age of Aries, Jesus Christ, as a sacrificial lamb, brought this solar kingdom to the earth and humanity. Since then, the earth has begun to shine with a new golden aura that bears within its radiance the promise of the golden city. Its future was purchased through great suffering. At the bottom left, you can see a Manichaean cross that had this three moons in the four quadrants. And then you have the earth with the 12 lunar gates, the Easter Grail moon as a pearl of great price. Seeing our journey through the Platonic year holistically, time becomes space. Christ as a 13th in the midst of the 12 Easters. On the right there, you have the cosmic Grail imagination. So here you have, if we celebrate these at the present time, you can see at the in the middle, you then have Virgo in the west, Pisces in the east, Sagittarius in the north, Gemini in the south. So Easter is then celebrated in our time when the sun is in Pisces. But in the age of Aries, you have the quadrants shown below, the cross shown below. In each Platonic month, there is a cross which has 4 gateways. And in our time, it's then related to that middle cross. And you have then those 4 guardians at those gateways, the 4 archangels. And in the future Sophian age, when the sun enters Aquarius, you'll have then the 3rd cross. You can superimpose these crosses onto each other, and then you'll get 12 gates. In the Effects of Spiritual Development, Lecture 6, Steiner describes how, freed from the body, clairvoyant perception perceives the skull as a castle in which terrestrial man is enchanted and imprisoned, wounded by the lower forces rising with the blood. So that can be sort of the bloody spear. The higher man is nourished by the pure sense impressions and the purest mineral substance in the noblest part of the brain. In Man as a Symphony, Rudolf Steiner indicated that, quote, it is actually in this mineral deposit, pineal brain sand, that the spirit man is situated. And this already indicates that what is living cannot harbor the spirit. The following excerpt is taken from a lecture in Berlin. When man's forebrain developed, the organ of the eye was focused in man's head at the root of the nose. In man, the eye streams out of this place, but it isn't enough that the organ of the ego is developed in man, so that the higher self can stream into him to make him into a higher being. We find the organ for this in the pineal gland. Makes man a connection with the divine self in the world through the pineal gland. So based on these indications and those given in the etherization of the blood lecture, I would propose that the human skull can become either the castle of the Grail or the castle of Klingsor, depending on whether the pineal gland, which can be likened to the stone that fell from Lucifer's crown during the battle in the heavens, is carved out through the development of compassion or remains hardened in egoism. Steiner mentioned that the etherized blood of Christ can unite with the etheric currents ascending from the heart. However, a true comprehension of the Christ and the mystery of Golgotha is necessary for that to take place. Christ ascended to our cosmos. There he works firstly from the sphere of the sun, as the 13th in the circle of the 12, as a spirit who fills the universe with his light, as a divine spirit of our solar system, as a representative of the spirit of the cosmos, of the whole universe. And then at the baptism in the Jordan that descends from the sun to the earth, in order that the earth may be filled with a new power, that the foundation be laid, whereby the earth may become a sun. The following words by Rudolf Steiner bring to expression the cosmic dimension of the first coming, which is now being repeated in the etheric level as an event that encompasses earth and humanity. When the event of Golgotha, when the blood flowed from the wounds of the great Redeemer, when the cosmic heart's blood penetrated the earth and its forces poured down as far as its center, the earth became illuminated from within and light rayed outward into the surroundings. The opportunity was then given to every single human individuality to experience this light within the self. When the earth became the body of the great Sun's spirit, through having been impregnated with his spirit powers, all the beings of the earth were equally endowed with these forces. The seed was planted for the reunion of sun and earth. And this next step is important. The physical body of Jesus of Nazareth was the mediator through which the power of the cosmos were united with the earth aura. And when the blood flowed from the body on Golgotha, the earth was taken up again into the sun power. Since then, this Christ power streams from its center into the surrounding and from the sun. Christ power streams into the earth. One is able to experience this power, this light, within oneself as a human being, when one knows oneself to be part of the earth, which as Christ's physical body is infused with his being. Then the white light streams outwards from within oneself as it streams out from the center of the earth. So here is a clear expression of how the center of the earth can be related to the pineal gland. There was a time when the earth and sun were united. In the Hyperborean age, the sun departed. It needed a faster evolution, but it left behind this golden core. And that is the pineal gland of the macrocosmic earth head. And since the second coming, it's shining with a new aura around the earth. Christ underwent a second death, together with this Nathan Jesus being, who's the mediator, who represents our own higher self that we have to create a vessel for. The human and cosmic dimension of the Holy Grail. Let us place before ourselves the mother, thought of as a virgin, with Christ on her lap, and let this make the statement: he who can have feelings of holiness before this image, awe and wonder and reverence is what he means here. He feels himself to be standing before the Grail, the holy chalice, the moon mother, now touched by Christ, the new Eve, bearer of Christ, the Sun Spirit, outshines all other lights, all other gods. So that's saying a lot. Rudolf Steiner, in one of his books where he gets more intimately talking about the Grail, he speaks of how he was in St. Peter's standing in front of Michelangelo's Pietà sculpture, where he had a powerful experience that led him to relive his own connection to the Grail, one can presume. And here the text is missing, but this has to do with the phantom body being restored. So the physical body, after the soul was invaded by Lucifer, and over time Ahriman entered into the picture, the phantom body, which is really the architect of the physical body, which has a deeper level of fashioning the physical body than the etheric, which is the mediator, was corrupted and was in danger of causing humanity to lose its connection to the divine. So through the mystery of Golgotha, this physical body, which had been prepared through the Nathan Jesus being, through the intervention of the Zarathustra being, and then the penetration of Christ in the 30th year at the baptism, and those 3 1/3 years leading to the mystery of Golgotha, when that body hung on the cross and the Roman soldiers were coming to break the legs. And Longinus, out of an intuitive, spiritually guided act, took his spear and charged and pierced that right side of the Jesus Christ being hanging on the cross. Then blood and water poured down out of that wound. And this really is the blood that bears within it the new phantom body that is the basis of what can be called the second Adam, a new creation that restores a path forward for humanity towards the 3 future stages, because this will only really come to fullest expression in the future Atman stage, which is kind of a recapitulation and metamorphosis of old Saturn into the Vulcan stage, the body temple. This is really the Grail, the overarching Grail mystery. And the blood that was gathered in this vessel that we hear how Titterel receives it from the angels who had borne it up into the soul world because humanity wasn't quite ready yet. He is able to receive it and help to bring it down for European humanity. We hear of northern Spain as a place where Grail castles were developed. And this Valencia chalice is one of those. So we have this mystery of Golgotha at the turning point of time, gave humanity the golden triangle. This has to do with the future stages of the transformed astral body into manas, the transformed and purified etheric into buddhi, or life spirit, and the transformed physical into Atman, or spirit man. These were given by Christ so that we can ascend to those 3 future stages. But this is a free act that we have to reach out of our own hearts and minds. This is where the act of asking questions, this question that Parzival initially didn't ask, of what ails thee. We need to develop this compassionate relationship to those who are around us that are the basis for building a new community that's not based on blood. That's the Grail secret, is a Pentecost community of the future. Pentecost was really a prefiguration of the world Pentecost that's meant to take hold in our time, because Christ is now not coming in the form of the Son principle, but in the form of the Holy Spirit. And the vessel for the Holy Spirit is the Maria Sophia. So we need to unite ourselves with the new Isis, the Sophia, who has the moon beneath her feet, crowned with the 12 stars and clothed with the sun. And there's a dragon with 7 heads that wants to devour this child that is in the midst of birth pangs in our time. The second coming, we're all participating in these birth pangs, in the challenges, in the pain and suffering that humanity is going through. But a part of humanity will reject that path, will have hardened hearts, and instead descend into what's called the 8th sphere. So in order to develop the transition from the planet of wisdom, which, as you can see on the left, the three stages of descending from old Saturn, where the foundation for willing and physical was laid, the old sun, where the foundation for feeling and the etheric was laid, and the old moon, where the thinking and the astral was laid. That's the heritage we have received in a threefold fashion. But in the earth stage, we had to add what the ego, the I, can add. There in the middle of that triangle is the capacity for love that was epitomized by the Jesus Christ being in the mystery of Golgotha. And he is the archetypal ego of humanity. And when we build this triangle upward, then the upper triangle, the divine triangle, comes to meet it. And then we can fashion the Grail star, the octagonal star, or the hexagonal star on the right, which prefigures the future planet of love. So Steiner indicated that in order to develop this love, we have to create a perfect balance of thinking, feeling, and willing. As you may recall, when we cross the threshold, then thinking, feeling, and willing separate. So the foundation stone meditation can help us to achieve this golden balance of those three soul forces and awaken this love, which is related to the fourth verse, where the shepherds and kings are mentioned, which relates to us on the way to the 10th hierarchy. And in his esoteric school around 1906, Steiner moved from what he had received from the Theosophical Society into a new esoteric working that borrowed to a certain extent from the Freemasonic wisdom of the past, which has some Manichaean roots that Steiner tapped into. And when you entered this lodge, this temple lodge, you had an altar in the east, which was the altar of wisdom, manas. You had an altar in the south, which was related to Buddhi and beauty. And you had an altar in the west related to Atman and strength, so that we could, those who participated in these rituals, would build this golden triangle. And in the higher grades, there was an added altar in the north. And these three altars inside the altar in the east was related to the morning sun, the midday to the altar in the south, and the evening to the altar in the west, and the one in the north to the midnight. And in the deeper mysteries, we have what's called the midnight sun. And you entered between the pillars of Yachin and Boaz, related to the red and the blue blood. So the gateway is related to the respiratory system, related to the lungs and the heart, the rhythmic system of in-breathing and out-breathing. Inspiration, in-breathing, out-breathing, speech. This is how we fashion the new word, sword. And in a esoteric lecture given to members of this, Steiner speaks of four archangels related to these four gates in that temple lodge. And this is the microcosmic dimension of the circle of the day-night. So there you have Michael in the east, you have Gabriel in the south, you have Raphael in the west, you have Uriel in the north. And Uriel goes back to old Saturn and the willing, Raphael to the old sun and the feeling life, and Gabriel to the old moon. That's the heritage from the three former planetary conditions. But Michael relates to the earth stage itself, where the ego is given. So he incorporates all of the other three. He is the one who stands at the altar in the east and works through the master, which Rudolf Steiner presided there together with Ita Wegman at the, or Marie Steiner, I should say, at the altar in the east, which had a side altar that had the book of Gospel of John open to the first. In the beginning was the Word. So this is the microcosmic. We might remember that what for us is a day-night rhythm is a yearly rhythm for the Christ being. So here you have it kind of expressed with the archangels in those four directions. And you have that golden triangle that we all kind of need to fashion. The golden triangle and the brazen sea that Christian Rosenkreuz and LeCount de Saint-Germain helped to prepare for humanity. LeCount de Saint-Germain had been, Christian Rosenkreuz had been Lazarus, had been Hiram. Hiram is the one who is the builder of Solomon's temple. He's the guardian of the Tao forces, and he received this golden triangle from the center of the earth. The center of the earth is where Hiram journeyed to get this hammer, to get this golden. That's where he met his forefather Cain in his three fall radiance. And so there's deep secrets in the temple legend related to this. And here we have sort of these layers of the earth, and with the Christ going through the washing of the feet, the scourging, the crowning of thorns, the bearing of the cross, the mystical death, the entombing, the resurrection, that took him in Holy Saturday penetrating the so-called hell regions of the earth. And then he had already prepared by the raising of Lazarus to be able to go through the fragmentar earth where the strife between Cain and Abel takes place, by uniting what he spoke of in his last address in a fragmentary form, that John the Baptist, who had been beheaded, united with Lazarus John at that raising from the dead. This united the Cain and Abel stream. But the adversarial backward Cain and Abel hate the middle stream, Steiner indicated, more than they hate each other. And they cause the destruction of that first GOETHEANUM. They made a pact against the middle. So the Christ established his throne at the center of the earth. This is also contained in that conversation that I touched upon with Rudolf Steiner and the Countess Kaiserling. She asked, is the center of the earth of gold? And he says, yes. So there's a sun at the center of the earth, a sun kingdom that was left behind when the sun left the earth. That's where the plants have their common ego. The plants receive not just light in a physical sense, but they mediate etheric light that through the roots penetrates to the center of the earth, where all the plants together have their ego. And the plants together live in Lower Devachan, which is where the music of the spheres come from. The minerals have their higher ego in the higher devachan. That's why the New Jerusalem has 12 precious stones as its foundation. And the priest in the Hebrew mysteries, the high priest who entered the Holy of Holies, had a breastplate with 12 gemstones. So these are all secrets relating to the building of the New Jerusalem. So this is a hint, a very important hint that not very many people have, that I know of, taken up. And it's no accident that Steiner gave this on the eve of the Christmas Foundation, which was meant to be the renewal of the mysteries. On the eve, Christmas 1923, the first evening of the Christmas Foundation gathering, which was meant to serve as a renewal of the Anthroposophical Society, Rudolf Steiner gave the first of a series of 11 lectures titled World History in the Light of Anthroposophy. The sketch and the excerpt below are taken from that lecture. The Christmas conference would culminate on December 31st, 1923, and New Year's Day, 1924, marking the first anniversary of the burning of the GOETHEANUM. And I believe that Steiner chose to share this particular sketch and narrative to express the microcosmic and macrocosmic correspondence between the human head and the earth, because this involves an esoteric Grail secret that was embodied in the first GOETHEANUM, which had been consumed by flames the year before. He spoke of how, for the ancient Orientals who still had clairvoyant capacities, quote, these men related the experience of their head to the earth, to the whole earth. I carry on my shoulders my head, and this head of mine is a true picture of the earth. This head, with the blood flowing in it, is a true picture of the earth, with the land and the water coursing over it. The configuration of mountains on the earth repeats itself in my head in the configuration of my brain. And as he had to feel the inner configuration of the head as an image of the earth, so he had to bring the environment of the earth, all that is above and around the earth, into connection with the opening downward, the turning towards the heart. Here is my head lives the earth. When I go deeper, there the earth is turning towards the sun. My heart is the image of the sun. Steiner had touched on this same theme the day before in the last lecture of the series of 14 lectures on mystery centers, which are also meant to prepare for the Christmas conference. So this is what leads me to fashion this image, which I sent out as part of the invitation. So I have up at the top there that sketch that Rudolf Steiner made on that evening. And in the seventh, in the higher stages of the Rosicrucian initiation, the fifth stage involves the relationship between macrocosm and microcosm. The sixth stage involves expanding into the macrocosm. That includes not only those incarnated on the physical plane between birth and death, but also all of those human beings who are between death and rebirth. And in the 15th century, in the consciousness soul age came into play, and Copernican theory of the solar system became the new outlook. That really only pertained to the physical cosmos. and turned human beings away from the more esoteric dimension of the cosmos. For that, the old Ptolemaic system, where the earth was the center, is actually the one that is more true. Because the earth, when we enter through the moon sphere, through birth. And when we excarnate, we re-enter the moon sphere. The moon sphere is also the purgatory sphere that takes place within the orbit of the moon. For those who go through purgatory and pass through that moon gate into the lower heavens, they pass into then the Mercury, Venus stages, and then into the sun sphere. The sun is the gateway to the higher heavens. The moon is the gateway to the lower heavens. Steiner conveyed a secret that for the sake of misleading the alchemists who were just trying to make physical gold rather than spiritual gold, they mixed up the two designations for Mercury and Venus. And so you have to reverse them to relate them to the present cosmic environment. So you have not just a battle at the center of the earth. We hear in Rosicrucianism that the interior of the earth are the hell regions of the earth, and the center of the earth is where the black magicians strive. But the Christ penetrated to that center. At the center of the earth, there's a battle that corresponds to the battle in the microcosm in the pineal gland. And this battle is also related to the sun. The sun, which is the center of our solar system, has a sun demon whose name is Zorat, whose number in the apocalypse is 666. And that's a big topic in itself, having to do with the mystery of evil. That's the really anti-Christ forces. And in the year 666, we have the first intervention, the next in 1332 and then 1998. These are forces that oppose the Christ and seek to prevent the Christ from, they want to usurp the Christ being. So in the middle of our post-Atlantean ages is the year 333. That's kind of a balancing point. And 333 years later, the first intervention of Zorat would take place. But the progressive spirits, the hierarchies, were aware of this. And the mystery of Golgotha took place then 333 years before that middle point. That's the middle point between 747 BC and 1413 AD. That's the intellectual Greco-Latin period. So the Christ came 333 years before that center point to counterbalance what was coming in 666, which was a premature impulse of the consciousness soul that was thwarted largely by Mohammedism coming on the scene. But the Arab stream also absorbed it. So the mystery of evil is somewhat complicated, but part of it relates to what Steiner's sharing in this crossing of the threshold, this initiation of humanity. Since 1841, humanity as a whole has been crossing the threshold, which involves meeting the lower guardian and individually and collectively facing the mystery of evil. The following words given by Rudolf Steiner in the esoteric school touch upon this. Quote, "Today, humanity as such is experiencing the meeting with the guardian of the threshold. This is also the beginning of the split of humanity, and this signifies a critical point in time at which we have now arrived. The forces that formerly streamed out of the spiritual beings into humanity are used up, are exhausted. We are now on our own and must now bring these forces out of our own subconsciousness. The mystery of Golgotha will have happened for nothing if human beings do not use these inner forces but reject them instead. That would bring about a total destruction of Earth evolution. And in another place, to this, my dear friends, I would now direct your hearts. It is happening now that the comparatively single and uniform kingdom of the angeloi is being turned into a twofold kingdom of angeloi, a kingdom of angeloi with an upward tendency into the higher worlds and with a downward tendency into lower worlds. While the Michael community is being formed here upon earth, we can behold above it the ascending and descending angeloi. Looking more deeply into the world today, one can perpetually observe these streams, which are such as to stir the heart to its foundation. So in this, the third karma relationship cycle, Steiner indicated that the above referenced division of humanity would also cast its waves into the sphere of the angels, so that they would also undergo a division. So this is a big responsibility. We can't be passive. We have to wake up. In the lecture series From Symptom to Reality in Modern History, Steiner shows how these 7 inexpressible mysteries apply to the cultural epochs. So the mystery that was in the foreground in the Greco-Latin period between 747 and 1413 are the mysteries of birth. These were unlocked through the birth of the Jesus being and the death of the Christ. But in our 5th post-Atlantean period, which began with 1413 and will end around 3573 or something like that, 2,160-year period. This has to do with the mystery of evil being in the foreground. That's why the sculptural group was meant to be at the center of the GOETHEANUM. That threefold approach to good and evil is needed. Today, when Christ is destined to appear again in the etheric, when a kind of mystery of Golgotha is to be experienced anew, evil will have a significance akin to that of birth and death for the 4th post-Atlantean epoch. In the 4th epoch, the Christ impulse was born out of the forces of death for the salvation of mankind. We can say that we owe the new impulse that permeated mankind to the event on Golgotha. Thus, by a strange paradox, mankind is led to a renewed experience of the mystery of Golgotha in the 5th epoch through the forces of evil. Through the experience of evil, it will be possible for the Christ to appear again, just as he appeared in the 4th Atlantean epoch through the experience of death. So here up above, we have, this indeed is a time of great decision, the great crisis to which the sacred books of all time have referred, for in reality, the present age is meant. So there's the danger that a large part of humanity who rejects this Christ impulse because they see a caricature of it, which is prevailing in our time, and allow themselves to be influenced by the beginnings of the 8th sphere, which are really the subnature aura around the earth that mediates the internet, the World Wide Web, artificial intelligence. This will all take on a much more powerful development in the very near future, referred to as AGI and ASI, and transhumanists trying to project an evolutionary paradigm that is really taking us into the eighth sphere. The eighth sphere involves a co-creation with the adversarial forces, a deviant creation outside the seven progressive evolutionary spheres, a spectral virtual world. Materialism inspired by Ahriman and one-sided exposure to the subnature forces draws humanity downwards into the abyss. And it's not just those forces, it's also forms of clairvoyance that are atavistic, reviving old forces of clairvoyance. So what this all involves is a collective crossing of the threshold. And this fourth Rosicrucian seal relates to this middle path between these two pillars, Joachim and Boaz, which were also the pillars that led into Solomon's temple. Solomon's temple was meant to prepare the future. The angel has a cloud body and has a book that we're called to eat, and it will taste like honey in our mouth, but bitter in our belly. It's sweet to have the experience of being touched by the gift of the Spirit, but it calls us to take up the cross of shared karma, the cross that compassion brings upon us. And yet that is really a baptism of fire that we need to unite with the gift of the Holy Spirit, with a purgatory, like Goethe said, dying and becoming, not waiting for death to undergo this dying and becoming, so that we can undergo a rebirth during the course of our earthly life. This is in the 10th chapter and the 11th chapter of the book of Revelation. And then the woman appears in the 12th chapter. And then the 13th chapter, we have a 7-headed, 10-horned beast that rises out of the water, is at first cast down from above and then rises up out of the water. This is the Luciferic danger that would take us back into the 7 Atlantean root races expressed by the 7 heads at a time when we're meant to overcome that racial and ethnic identity and the blood-related community to forge a new Pentecostal community, a new community not based on blood, but shared wisdom, shared communion with the woman standing on the moon, the archetype of our soul, the new Isis, Sophia. On the right side, you have a beast that rises out of the dry land. It looks like a lamb with 2 horns, but it speaks like a dragon. This is the Ahrimanic danger. Ahriman has an affinity and mediates the influence of Zorat. And there's a third evil besides the Ahrimanic and the Luciferic called the Azuras, which are attacking in our time. The Luciferic beings began their attack in the Lemurian, the Ahrimanic, and the Atlantean. In our time, the Azuric beings begin their attack. They attack through the physical body, which is the foundation for the I we're developing in the consciousness soul. They especially attack through sexuality by turning it downward towards the interior of the earth rather than the sacramentalization of marriage that the religious sacrament, which is also there in the Christian community, seeks to ennoble and raise love to a higher level. As we saw in the last presentation, the lower human being, which is considered our lower nature, was meant to be our higher nature. It's due to the Luciferic and Arabonic influence that we became physical in that part of our being. That's why we hear how human love is like a nectar and ambrosia for the gods. It's a nourishment for the gods. It has to be raised to a higher level. In the first half of Earth's evolution on the left, we had the descent, the Mars phase, the division of the sexes. On the right side, we have the recommunion of the sexes, the overcoming eventually of gender separation. And this is mediated by the Nathan Jesus being who never participated in the fall. This is the being that will help us in the later part of the sixth age to undergo what's called the first death, where we have to leave the physical body behind and have our lowest member as the etheric. This will be prepared by the new bodhisattva who reaches Buddhahood in that time, the Maitreya Buddha, who will be the first to forge the Grail sword on a very powerful level, where his words will actually change the listeners morally. So we have a lot to look forward to, but there are three gifts that can turn into three fallen dangers. And these are given to humanity in this time of crossing the threshold. The Eastern humanity is given the gift of eugenic high occultism, the birth mysteries. Middle Europe, related to this rainbow, called the Rainbow People by Steiner, the feeling people, have the gift of hygienic occultism, the healing Raphaelic impulse. And then to the Western humanity, especially the Americas, the English-speaking people, is mechanical occultism. In the lecture on the work of the angels in man, Astral Body, which is worth rereading several times, Steiner speaks of three gifts that the angels are trying to give us that prepare us for this next future sixth age. And that if we don't wake up to what the angels are weaving into our astral body by rising into the sphere of imagination during our waking life, then they're forced to weave these impulses into our sleeping bodies, and then they become their opposite. We then have a negative version of birth mysteries, which come to expression in perverse forms of sexuality, etc., and gives license to the azuric forces which attack through the sexual and lead to sadomasochistic forms of perverse human expression. And then in the middle, the healing will lead to inverse form of medicine that we can see beginning that will intervene in the genome of the human being in a way that sounds good because science is promoting it, but will actually have a negative effect on the evolution of humanity. And third, perverse or fallen version of mechanical occultism will come into play. And that's a particular danger where Steiner talked about a new technology. So I need to wrap this up. I know we've been going on for quite a while. I haven't looked at the clock for a bit. It's already 11 o'clock. So this is just showing some of what humanity is facing. Steiner, in his lecture series, 18 lectures to the priests and the Vorstand members, among the last lectures he gave, in 1924, just before he stopped lecturing on September 28th, 1924. He gave a new understanding for this consciousness soul age of the book of Revelation. And there he said the sixth trumpet began to sound in the 1840s. That's when humanity began crossing this threshold that's depicted in that fourth seal. And that at the turn of the millennium, that's the year 3000 that we've entered with the new millennium, the seventh trumpet would begin to sound. And that's related to the woman standing on the moon, crowned with the stars, clothed with the sun, and has many meanings. One goes back to the Atlantean time, and one goes into the future at the end of the Earth in the transition to the future Jupiter. But we're experiencing a preview of that now. And the reason for that is up until the fourth post-Atlantean age, we were recapitulating. The old Indian age was a recapitulation of the Polarian. The age of the Persian, Zarathustra age, was a recapitulation of the Hyperborean. The Lemurian age was recapitulated in the third Babylonian Chaldean age. And the Atlantean age, the first Earth stage proper, was recapitulated in the Greco-Latin from 747 to 1413. But in this fifth age, we're not recapitulating anymore. We're anticipating the future. What is that future? It's the fifth stage of Earth evolution as a whole, which is the future Jupiter. That's why this threshold and these trumpets are sounding now in this consciousness soul age, because we're preparing that future in a very critical way, that we have to wake up and ask questions like Parzival failed to do the first time. So let me see what I have here. I'm going to just go through these last couple here. In that book of Revelation and the work of the priests cycle, Rudolf Steiner spoke of the work of Christ's opponent, the demon of the sun, Zorat, called the two-horned beast. In chapter 13 of the Apocalypse, he stated that, quote, before man can grasp the etheric Christ in the right way, mankind must first meet and deal with the beast who will rise up in 1933. Hitler's rise to power in 1933 can be seen as one of the ways that the forces of evil have sought to counter the second coming of Christ in the etheric, which was to begin to take effect in 1933. 33 years after the end of the Kali Yuga, which ended in 1899. The Anthroposophical Society was banned in Germany by the Gestapo in 1935. During the post-Atlantean age, in the fourth epoch culture of the post-Atlantean age, this problem of birth and death was more connected with the human soul. But during our own time, the fifth post-Atlantean epoch, people will have to struggle with evil in the same elementary way in which they struggle with birth and death during the Atlantean age, particularly through the control of the forces of nature. The impulses of that lead to evil will send their influence into the world in an immense, gigantic form. And the opposite forces, the forces of good, will have to grow out of the opposition to evil. And when man will have to draw the strength for this opposition out of spiritual sources. This will take place above all during the fifth epoch, when the exploitation of electric forces, which will assume quite different dimensions from those which they have assumed thus far, will enable man to spread evil over the earth and evil will invade the earth by coming into an immediate way out of the forces of electricity. So this kind of relates to the building of the New Jerusalem up above and the building of the great city of Babylon down below. In each stage of evolution, up there on the left, old Saturn, old Sun, old Moon, certain beings remain behind. And with them, these etheric forces and astral forces fell into lower spheres. So Lucifer has an affinity to electricity, Ahriman to magnetism, the Azurus to the nuclear force. The nuclear force has much more to it than what is known thus far. So for those who take in the Christ impulse, the aim is to build and co-create the New Jerusalem. But those who come under the spell of these subnature forces, which are being amplified in our time, especially since the third 666 in 1998. That's when Google was formed. And that's when many new impulses that have led up to what has since become the computer networks and the World Wide Web and the foundations for AI were developed. And around the Earth, we have a new formation, according to these scientists, which is called the noosphere, after the thinking word for the Greeks. So we have an aura around the Earth that is a new thinking sphere that's over and above the lithosphere and the biosphere. In the beginning was the thought, and the thought is something infinite, and the life of the thought is the light of the eye. May the illuminated thought fill the darkness of my eye, so that the darkness of my eye take hold of it, the living thought, and live and weave in its divine beginning. So we hear in the beginning was the word, but before that word was spoken, there was divine thought. So we have in artificial intelligence the intellectual fall of humanity. I'm relating it here to the four horsemen of the apocalypse. The horse is related to thinking, and we go from the white horse related to a kind of reflection of the ancient Indian period, where the rider has a golden crown, he has a bow and has a sure aim. The gods were still thinking in the human being. The second red horse has a rider with a sword. And the Mars forces that live in the blood, the Luciferic forces start to come into play. Strife comes into human evolution. Then thinking descends a stage further. That was in the Persian age. Then we have in the Egypto-Chaldean Babylonian, we have another descent where weighing and counting and measuring geometry came into vogue. And human beings then rode a black horse. Death started to enter the thinking. And with this weighing, measuring, and counting. And yet the certain sacramental substances are preserved from this. Hurt not the oil was mentioned. And then the fourth horse is the pale horse. The rider is death, and hell follows after him. That's the spectral intelligence. And at the bottom right, we see the five-pointed star. On the left, the human being stands in it. Evil enters through the feet and can only reach up to the human sexual forces and seeks, with the help of the azuric forces, to pull it down into the abyss. When that happens, you have black magic. Sexual magic, gray magic leads over to black magic. And that star on the right with the goat head, where the star is turned upside down, is a symbol of that black magic. So we're kind of well on our way to collectively descending into this abyss where the Ahrimanic forces are particularly strong. And we need to counter that through leading our thinking up into the realm of imagination, inspiration, intuition, where the meditative life, the study of spiritual knowledge, spiritual science can play an important role. So we're stuck, we're there in this tension between subnature and supernature on both a microcosmic and a macrocosmic level. The fact that we have all these satellites, Elon Musk company wants to put 1 million of them up there. Those forces want to cut us off from the star world and instead pose a virtual world that is threatening our future by sending humanity into the eighth sphere. Instead of seeing the gods behind the stars by lifting the veil of Isis, Sophia, we're instead wanting to go to Mars and the moon, create moon bases, Mars base. This is all caricature of the true goals. It's a kind of black magic on a cosmic level. So I'm going to stop here with this last. I have frequently pointed out, quite deliberately, included in public lectures, that human consciousness is associated with forces of destruction. Into our nervous system we die. These forces, these death forces, will become ever more powerful, and the connection will be made between the death forces in the human being, which are related to electromagnetic forces, and outer machine forces. In a sense, the human being will be able to let his thoughts pass into the machine forces, and yet undiscovered forces within the human being will be discovered, forces that have an effect on outer electrical and magnetic forces. This has to do with the human doppelganger and the version of mechanical occultism that is not a positive version. And this is well underway. So let me stop there and sort of give an opportunity to sort of let some of that resonate for a minute. And then if people have questions, comments, I know this is very deep and powerful content that can be overwhelming, but yet so can all of these forces we're facing in our time. So thank you very much for your patience, staying, with us through these deep contemplations.
Dear Florian, thank you so much for your intense presentation as usual. So, would you like to have a little break before you will answer some questions?
I'll kind of leave it
No?
up to you, whatever you think. I can go either way.
Okay. All right. As soon as it's so late in UK, for example, so can we start? So,
Sure.
dear friends, do you know how to raise your hands? So, in order to keep order. So, and okay, we have two hands. So, Nisha is first. Nisha, if you can unveil your face. If you're not, okay, thank you. Hi.
Hi, Andrew. Thanks, Florian. My question is about splintering and the pineal gland. It's a word I heard on the Mystec conference this year, and it was about trying to sort of bring it all back together again after splintering. Is this a term you're aware of or have come across in relation to working with the pineal gland at all? Or why that might
Yeah,
happen? Yeah.
I think when I show this correspondence between the microcosmic and macrocosmic dimension of the pineal gland, the macrocosmic dimension at the center of the earth, where you have this golden center, this remnant of the sun. In the Rosicrucian picture of those 9 layers, the 8th layer is the splintering earth, that splitter that splits everything up into fragments. And this is part of the mystery of evil. You could say the artificial intelligence, search engines, these data centers, they have billions, trillions of bits of information that have been gleaned from scraping the internet, scraping all the volumes in the libraries. And it's all there in data bits. And when we are involved in asking something from Google or ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude, it's drawing on these data centers that have this huge amount of fragmentary information. And we know that the whole system is binary of zeros and ones that these CPUs, GPUs use to draw together this data. It's all huge amounts of numbers that are fragmentary. And supercomputers use then refrigeration to a very high degree to create a cryonic kind of condition that allows for a way that magnetism and electrical forces can work much more efficiently in those kind of environments. Steiner indicated that the more you approach Ahriman, the colder it gets. It's like entering into a dark cave. He draws all knowledge to himself, but he lacks the heart. It's the heart that draws the bits and pieces of our experience and makes them into a whole. The warmth of the heart needs to become an inner sun. That is what the lemniscate between head and heart would bring about. At the Christmas conference, the foundation stone was laid into the hearts. Michael ruled cosmic intelligence in the past from the sun sphere, which is the macrocosmic heart. But in order to prepare for human freedom, he had to let go of it in the wake of the Christ descending from the sun to the earth. And around the 12th, 13th century, when the Grail mysteries were written down, these Michaelic forces had reached the point of coming to expression in human thinking, in scholasticism, in the school of Chartres leaders, etc. But that was still nurtured by this clairvoyance that was a gift from above. since the 15th century, that old clairvoyance becomes atavistic, it's out of its right timing. We need a new clairvoyance. And so Michael now has to enter the human heart. And that can only happen if we invite the Michael impulse into our hearts. And then our hearts can begin to shine like an inner sun. Michael is the countenance of the Christ being. And Michael has risen from being an archangel to becoming an archai in our time. He's a ruling spirit of time. So that's a very powerful role. So yes, this fragmenting is very much a part of our social media environment, the artificial intelligence environment, the data centers, the binary codes that are used. And we've got quantum computing around the corner, which works in a different way. And that's going to be more powerful still. So that your question is an important one. Thank you for that.
Thanks, Florian.
Sorry, I was muted. So, George, please.
Hi, Florian. I just wanted to ask you, why is it that the anime painting behind you seems to have a reversal of the side panels?
Let's see. I'm seeing it.
Maybe is it just a projection or something? Is it behind you?
On the right side. Yeah. If I turn around and look at it, I have the Temple of Solomon on the left, Solomon and Hiram on the left, and I have the initiation of Christian Rosenkreuz on the right.
Okay, to the right of the crucified Christ.
Yes.
I mean, Solomon and Sheba should be to the right.
On the left. On the
On
left.
the left. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
It projects the other way round for some reason.
Mm.
Ah, okay. That's all I wanted to ask.
Because because of camera, so sometimes
Must be
it
something like
shows
that.
in reverse manner.
Yeah, it could be.
Right.
Florian, so just a short question. So how are we going to redeem all this evil world, quote unquote?
Huh.
Because, I mean, of course, we can say, okay, so we're not gonna deal with it. But there is opinions inside of the anthroposophical community, so that artificial intellect and all this digital world giving to us as one more exercise to shape our consciousness soul perfectly and come forward with some forces of redemption of elemental beings and not only elemental beings, because it's Ahrimanic beings. It will be probably hard with Azuric beings, but they are waiting for redemption. All these gadgets and space stations, satellites. So they're waiting for redemption because it's embodiment of certain beings. It's embodiments. For now, they are embodiments of elemental beings.
I think in an earlier presentation on this Grail theme, I spoke about the youth of 9 who became who was the youth of Sais in Egyptian time, who had lifted the veil of Isis and was struck dead. That was an expression of the Egyptian mysteries moving towards a new stage where the Osiris being had been killed and Isis became the widow. And this youth of Zeiss became the youth of 9, who was raised from the dead by Jesus Christ. And in an esoteric lecture, Steiner had indicated that in order for those earlier ages of the ancient Indian, Persian, Egypto-Chaldean, Babylonian to be renewed, representatives of those 3 ages had to be raised from the dead by Christ. And that for the Egypto-Chaldean, Babylonian, it was the youth of 9 who was raised from the dead. So he has then become the leader of our 5th post-Atlantean age. He later reincarnated as Mani. Mani's task involves the transmutation of evil. This is sort of an alchemy that will outlive Rosicrucianism, Steiner says. This being who appeared as Mani will later take over the task of the Manu, the 13th in the Lodge of the 12, the Mother Lodge that Steiner refers to as the Masters of Wisdom and Harmony of Feeling, the 13th in the midst of them, who's overlighted by the Holy Spirit, that this present Manu is a being who didn't begin his evolution at the time when humanity began its physical incarnations in the Lemurian period. He has an earlier evolution that prepared him for that task. But in the 6th future epoch, after the war of all against all, this new Manu will begin his task. And that is the Mani being who is leading our age. He later, according to Steiner, appeared as Parzival in the 9th century and prefigured the consciousness soul age. And that the earth as a whole was given the gift of the sacrificial lamb that shed its blood that appears in the book of Revelation. And each one of us can make a connection with the being who was a vessel for the Christ, which is the Nathan Jesus being. This is a being that Mani Parzival Nathan had to connect with in order to become the Grail King. And this being has these higher etheric forces referred to as the tone or chemical ether that's behind the elemental table of the elements that spans from the lightest element, hydrogen, through helium, all the way to uranium on the other side. Behind this is the music of the spheres. And this is the basis of a future technology and alchemy, is to be given the gift mediated by the Nathan Jesus being who didn't participate in the fall of the full measure of the tone ether. And that is what gives rise to the micrologos, the word, the Grail sword. But there's a second part which is related to the life ether. This is called the meaning ether by Steiner, that has to do with thinking in its higher true sense, thinking as a moral activity that Steiner sought to share in his philosophy of freedom. There he said, and you can read about it in this book that deals with Steiner's indications about his book, The Philosophy of Freedom, that is written by Otto Palmer. It's The Philosophy of Freedom, it's called. There he gathers together all the things that Steiner said of the philosophy of freedom in his later esoteric works through to his period before his death. And there he says that in order to arrive at this higher thinking, we have to raise our thinking from the physical brain to the etheric brain. So if we think of the earth as the macrocosmic head, which I tried to show through those images and through Steiner's indication that the ancient Indians saw the earth as the head, and the fact that we've created this global brain, this internet, those are all based on sub-nature forces. Those are all fallen etheric forces. And those are a counterfeit ascent into a pseudo-spiritual world that is not the same as ascending into the supersensible etheric world, which is mediated again by the Nathan Jesus. For that, we need those parts of the life ether and chemical ether that were held back, that are now mediated by the Nathan Jesus as the Grail vessel for the second coming of Christ. So the earth, this being, the Nathan Jesus, went through a kind of second mystery of Golgotha together with the Christ in the 19th, beginning of the 20th century, where it underwent a soul death. Steiner calls it a kind of a extinguishing of consciousness of this being. But this being, together with the Christ, overcame that death. And that led to the expansion of the etheric aura of the earth, which was more tightly connected with the earth, to expand it out beyond the surface of the earth into this new sphere, as it's called. And this is called Shambhala by the Tibetan Buddhists, the fairy tale land of Shambhala. The Christ is giving that back to humanity. This is the world we can enter through the new natural clairvoyance that is arising because our own ether body, which began to separate, expand beyond the perimeter of the head in the Greek period, and is more recently, since the 17th century, expanding in the heart. This is the basis for a new clairvoyance, a new seeing into the etheric. This is an imaginative picture consciousness behind which stands inspiration. And the inspiration is what's given through the tone, mediated by the tone ether, the musical ether. And so we shouldn't shy away from using these forces, but we have to see them for what they are. They are spreading around the earth subnature forces and amplifying them more and more. All these data centers are gathering all human knowledge, but it's all Epimethean knowledge. Epimetheus was the brother of Prometheus. He's the one that opened Pandora's box and let out all the plagues. All this internet, World Wide Web, data center thinking is all Epimethean. We need the fire of the Holy Spirit, the Promethean thinking. And that's the baptism with fire. That's really the Pentecost event. And that's where, in the middle of that circle of the disciples in the upper room, is the Maria, in whom the Sophia has united. In the Slavic Russian region, their souls have been preparing for this sixth age where the Sophian impulse will be in the foreground. Brotherhood will come to expression. But you can see in the world around us how racial and ethnic strife is actually being amplified. Blood-bound identity is being amplified in Israel as we speak. In Israel, in the place where the temple in Jerusalem was, Steiner speaks of a golden formation there. That's a seed for the New Jerusalem. But backward Christian forces that are a character of Christianity want to build a third temple there. They want to lead us into an Armageddon, an apocalypse, because they believe that that has to happen first before the Messiah comes. They haven't embraced the Jesus Christ being in his first coming. So there's going to be an attempt to take over that position of the Christ. And it will be done with the help of these forces that are being propagated through the internet, through the subnature forces, in my view of these things. So we have two auras. One is the subnature aura. That's leading us towards the eighth sphere. The other is a supernature aura that we can help to amplify through thinking living thoughts, through heart thinking, through entering the world of imagination, inspiration, intuition, embracing the Michaelic wisdom, making it our own, bringing it to life, sharing it in circles where two or three are gathered, building communities where we look each other in the eye and can hear people speaking from the heart. There, Christ promised, I will be with you until the end of time. And that's where we can create little Grail circles where two or three are gathered. And the internet can be used for these kinds of events like we have now, but we need to bring it back down into our interpersonal life with other human beings here on the physical plane as well.
Yeah, thank you. So, what Rudolf Steiner predicted, so all this technology and all kind of horrible things relates to electricity and digital world will be absolutely normally predictable our spiritual landscape for next period of life. So there is a question, so I mean, if they're waiting for redemption, so in which way we're going to redeem them?
Well,
We're not going to weep them or we're trying to avoid them, so, but how?
in that
Can
Thomas Meyer quote where he says, you know, the hierarchies are involved in the three first verses. The elemental beings are mentioned in each of the three verses. The elemental beings hear it in north and south and east and west. This has to do with, behold, I make all things new. This is not the old heaven and earth. This is a new marriage of heaven and earth that the Christ is bringing about. In order to participate in it, we have to lift the veil of the stars. We have to reawaken the icy Sophia, who's been slain and killed by the projection of materialistic scientific worldview, the Copernican view of the universe and the stars. And this goes for Elon Musk's and others who talk about transhumanism and the like. Yes, we have, under the guidance of this Manichaean impulse to redeem evil, and we need to do it in the way we connect with nature beings in our everyday life. That's why I have a garden out back. I have a chicken out there that lets me know when she's hungry. I got fish in my pond that I got to feed every morning, otherwise they're not going to do too well.
Yeah.
And I got the bees visiting, the birds coming, and they want some of those bugs that, so I let some of the plants have bugs so the birds got something to eat. And so it's all part of learning to read out of the book of nature, the book of life. That's why Rudolf Steiner was given the task of editing Goethe's scientific work, because he brought the realm of qualities in. This is what's missing in this artificial intelligence, the qualitative. The heart isn't there. Ahriman has no heart. In the sculpture of Ahriman, he has no forehead. He doesn't have that moral dimension that human beings were given at the tail end of the fourth age, where Steiner talks about lightning and thunder and the intervention of the highest being to create a new organ in our forehead that gives us the ability to develop moral intuitions, to develop the kind of pure thinking that Steiner embodied. And if we loosen that thinking from the physical brain, then we can begin to connect with our angel, because the angel has as its lowest member the etheric. And we are on their way to becoming angels in the future. That's our task, to prepare for the New Jerusalem, the Golden City. And so by the sixth age, at the end of it, we're also meant to reach a point where we can make the etheric our lowest member with the help of the Nathan Jesus being, who's needed as a eugenic gift. And that's our higher self, according to Steiner, that is waiting for us. It's been multiplied. And so in that one quote where Steiner says that electricity would be used to propagate evil in ways that were way beyond what was the case in his time. In the meantime, electricity, when Steiner talks about these things at the end of the etherization of the blood lecture, where he talked about the subnature forces, he had also then questions. And it's no accident that those questions were kind of evoked. He wants people to ask the kind of questions that were asked at that time. You know, what is electricity? He talks about electricity is when light is pulled down and compressed into the deepest sort of material sphere. It's decaying light, and it's fallen astrality. And he says that light in its true form is not just propagated in the three dimensions. It has a fourth dimension, which is inwardness. And that is the fact that light seen outside in the cosmos is the same thing as we have inwardly as thinking. Steiner gives this in his color, but electricity is fallen light. It also has inwardness. But who is the inward being who is receiving all that knowledge, pulling it all together? That's the being who wants to create the eighth sphere as a counter earth. And that's a being who is aligned to Zorat and the Azuras. Ahriman's incarnation is imminent. And Steiner said, even when a very small period of the new millennium occurs, Ahriman will appear in the flesh in the West. Most all of these data centers, like 75, 80% of them are in the United States. That means all these people using social media, the internet in Africa, in China, in Europe, in countries in the Slavic, all of those memory banks are mostly in the United States. And look at the president who's at the center of power in the United States. This individuality can be a reminder of Philip le Bel, who had a former incarnation in the Mexican mysteries. He was greedy for gold. Look at the Oval Office and all the gilding that's there. Look at the greed that is there. Look at when the nomination took place, and all of these people who own these big data companies were there in front of the cabinet. These are all people who control this cyberspace. This individuality has an occult connection with these beings who are trying to set the stage for the incarnation of Ahriman, which is imminent. And these companies controlled by billionaires, the division between the wealthy and the poor has never been greater. It's like a reminder of the Gilded Age, only on a much more powerful level. So another name for Ahriman is the being who's the god of money. And that god of money is playing a central role in the coming of Ahriman. Right now, the US has a $40 trillion debt. We just crossed that threshold a few days ago, weeks ago. And the bond markets are in turmoil. Bond yields have gone up. People don't trust the United States that it's going to be able to deal with its debt. So all these countries are pulling out of buying US Treasury bonds, which means the yield goes up, our debt costs more. And Japan, just a few weeks ago, our Treasury Secretary intervened in Japan to bail its economy out of dangers that its bond market was showing. And now the US itself is in a similar situation. And so there's a pretty good prognosis that the economy is going to crash. And out of that, there will be attempts to create a world government, which Rudolf Steiner's indications about the Anglo-American brotherhoods who were behind, together with the Jesuits, the burning of the GOETHEANUM, behind Caspar Hauser, behind Demetrius. They hate the two John beings, the middle being that Steiner says is a central theme in anthroposophy that he spoke about in his fragmentary last address. And this tells us something about who the anti-Grail forces are, because that first GOETHEANUM was a Grail building. These beings are who were behind the destruction of the GOETHEANUM are the anti-Grail forces. They don't want to unite Cain and Abel. They don't want to unite the masculine and the feminine, who are feminine related to Abel, masculine related to Cain. They want to keep them apart. And so this is what we're kind of up against. You have forces in Christianity, a caricature of Christianity in the United States that are behind Pete Hegseth, who want to say women shouldn't vote anymore. There should be one vote per family. And it's the man who's the father of the house. He's the one who should determine who that vote is for. Hegseth is someone who wants to build that third temple. He's in charge of the US military. And the US military was behind, through DARPA, the beginnings of the computer chips. They funded all that, the beginnings of Silicon Valley. And they funded the early internet that was used to counter Cold War Russian threat. And they're the ones who gave it over to others, just like they did the Genome Project, gave it over to others. They had the Manhattan Project and leaked it to Russia to create the Cold War. If one goes deeper into these occult secrets of evil, then you can see these beings behind it on the physical stage working today. These are the ones that we have to unmask and get to know, because the mystery of evil isn't, it's like in Germany, the better part of the German people, including many anthroposophies, were kind of not ready to recognize Hitler. And Hitler's Nazi regime in 1935 closed down Anthroposophical Society, Waldorf schools, etc. And he was considered a kind of messiah figure by many Germans because of the humiliation of the First World War and the kind of punishment they had to deal with financially, of reparations, etc. It was totally unrealistic, the inflation and all of that. So Steiner gave a lot of insights into the working of these backward brotherhoods who were behind the burning of the GOETHEANUM, that we need to understand how they are related to this technology now, because they are the ones who created the Royal Society and launched modern science and its materialism. All these technology are based on the Baconian idea. Bacon was a reincarnation of Harun al-Rashid. Harun al-Rashid had taken all these individuals in his regime who had been representative of the Persian culture, who often worked in medicine, and had them killed and beheaded so that the moon mysteries squelch the sun mysteries. And that's happening now because these electrical forces are fallen moon mysteries, magnetism, fallen sun mysteries, and the nuclear force, fallen Saturn mysteries. And more data centers, they want to use nuclear. The more we use of that, the quicker the Earth will die. And human beings won't be ready for that threshold event. So there's a lot of parts to the picture that are not so easy to penetrate. But this mystery of evil, you have to work carefully over many years to deal with what Steiner said. For example, look at what happened with Prosper Hauser. Look at what happened with Demetrius. Look at the two Johns, and look at the beings who work through those. Like Demetrius means son of earth. Demetrius was initially hailed as a kind of czar that would bring a new impulse into Russia. But behind him was the Jesuits who wanted to bring Catholicism into Russia. And it pretty soon became apparent to Russians who were more awake when the marriage of Demetrius to his wife, it had to be a Catholic ceremony. They already saw through the fact that something was wrong here. And so he was then seen through. And yet there were two more false Demetriuses after him. So we're in a time where there will be, because in Israel, many of the Jews haven't accepted the Christ because they haven't been willing to take on the guilt that that represents. Because the high priests of the Jews were saying, crucify him. There was an opportunity to free him, and they instead chose Barabbas. And so they don't want to accept that guilt, so they'd rather say that wasn't the Christ, that wasn't the Messiah. We're still waiting for him. So he's going to come on the physical plane in the very near future. And this is where Ahriman in his incarnation will take advantage of those kind of expectations. And I think you can't get world government without the United States, which is standing in the way of first undergoing a tremendous fall. And this economic fall that I just alluded to can set the stage for a shift to the United Nations to once again play a central role. And the Western Brotherhoods have prepared the way for that to happen. And they've been looking at all the different scenarios at how they can bring that about. So anyway, that's just looking ahead in my perspective to what I see on the horizon.
Yeah, thank you, Florian. So, well, so many details. Okay, so here is Steve with um, question. Steve, go ahead.
Yes. Thank you, Florian, for your lecture today. And I just wanted your take on this reality where there's going to be a split coming, and they fall. My understanding is we're if we aren't up to the task that being discussed and we fall, our angel falls with us, even though the angel obviously can't control us. So I'm just I include my angel in my meditations because that level is just above us, right? And my angel is with me all the time. And so I always include my angel as well as obviously higher spiritual beings. But I guess I have a material idea of, it's not just for the angel to fall or pay for my sins. Uh, how does that work exactly?
In one of the quotes I shared earlier, Steiner actually spoke of this in the lecture, the work of the angels in the human astral body, where he said at the end, after describing the three positive gifts and how if human beings don't wake up to receive them, they have to weave it into the sleeping human body. And then instead of the Christ coming, he comes as a thief in the night. And that as a result, the angel undergoes a change, which he said he couldn't talk about at that time because it was still an occult secret. But in this third karma series, he did speak about it. And I quoted it earlier where he says that the angels are very much dependent on the human being because the Christ has now come into the human realm. And if we take in anthroposophy, we have something to give to the angels, and that helps to the angel to rise higher. Another perspective is this isn't the first time that this occurred. Steiner speaks about in 879 when the council in Constantinople took place. This was a very important juncture in human evolution. On the outer plane, you had a situation where the church fathers gathered, and they gathered in the Hagia Sophia, which was dedicated to the Sophia, but has since become a mosque in Istanbul, where you're not allowed to have images according to Islam. Imagination is the first step. Islam is a moon religion. Islam came after Christ. It was a moon religion without the sun impulse. Muhammad had many wives and he had numerous children, but he only had two male offspring. Both of them died. One of them had a sun eclipse. This is a sign that the sun impulse, the middle aspect of the Trinity, was not able to come in through this Mohammedan impulse. I was talking about how the golden chamber, the cubicle chamber, the Holy of Holies, is a seed for the New Jerusalem. It's all gilded in gold. That's where the high priest went after going through these four colors, which represent the four element curtain. and that the mystery of Golgotha was torn open to humanity. And so the secrets that were formerly kept were now open to humanity on the stage of history. And you have these elemental beings experience who live in those four elements, but human beings have to Christianize the earth. That's what the Grail mysteries were all about. The Arthurian knights brought moral impulses everywhere they went, and they still saw the Christ in the etheric realm and in the elements of earth, air, water, fire, in the aura of the earth. And their initiation was centered around Arthur, who represented the sun, Guinevere the moon, and 12 knights who were gathered around, and then other knights who represented the other stars. They were a humanized zodiac. Then there were the Grail knights who experienced Christ in the human heart. Here you have Joseph of Arimathea gathering the blood and Nicodemus taking the body. That's the deeper level that goes a stage deeper than the Last Supper, where bread and wine were symbolically expressing that body and blood. Here there were actual blood, actual body. Body was laid into the earth, the blood was gathered. And so you have in 869, according to Steiner, these two streams, the Arthurian and the Grail stream, united. And that when Christ departed from the sun, he left his Atman on the sun. He brought his transformed etheric body into the atmosphere of the earth. That's what the Arthurian knights beheld in the waves, in the water, in the rainbow, in this dance of the elementals. And then Joseph of Arimathea, who carried this blood in this vessel that was used at the Last Supper, and later these mysteries were brought to Europe. These two streams united in 869 at the very same time that the third principle of the Trinity was denied at the Eighth Ecumenical Council in 869. And Steiner indicated that at that same time, there was a division in the angelic realm where certain angels followed the Michael being and others followed the other 6 archangels under the leadership of the Saturn archangels Raphael, who began to separate from the Michael impulse to a certain extent. So you have huge events taking place in the hierarchical realm, and those angels that followed Michael, they were on an up orientation, and those human beings associated with them participated in the Michael school that took place from the 15th century onward, but others took this descent downward. And so we have a new round of that in our own time, now in connection with the second coming of Christ, where a part of humanity is oriented with the help of Michael, with the help of the new knowledge of the Spirit, to raise consciousness in such a way that the angels themselves can benefit and the elemental beings can participate. So that's co-creating the New Jerusalem. That's preparing to participate in the second coming in the etheric. That's enhancing the aura of the earth. And the primary way to do that is the counterpart to the 4 altars in that microcosmic temple. in that microcosmic temple, you had 4 altars: east, south, west. That was truth, beauty, goodness, manas, buddhi, atman, and then the midnight sun in the northern. But now, in order to influence the earth and its aura, we have to reach the pineal gland at the center of the earth. How do we do that? Through celebrating the 4 seasonal festival, which has to do with the same archangels who also work in this microcosmic temple. Only in that case, it's a day-night rhythm, and in this case, it's a yearly rhythm. So by participating in those 4 gateways and celebrating those 4 festivals, that circle of the seasons can become a spiral. Each year we can reach it on a higher level. And it can become community building, because celebrations are meant to be community events that spiritual beings can participate in. There's the ritual way of working in that direction. The Christian community has ways of working with the festivals. So those who are more of the able path have that as a gift that was given with the help of Rudolf Steiner. And in the future, these 2 paths of Cain and Abel will weave together and complement each other more and more. But this is what we have to set against, is when human beings come together to celebrate, and more bring all the arts together to celebrate, which is what Rudolf Steiner had intended with the first GOETHEANUM. He spoke of a ritual that would have taken place at Easter in front of that sculptural group that involves the being of Raphael with his caduceus staff and this healing impulse. So we have been given, like in the early days, Steiner worked with this ritual work, which worked with the day-night rhythm and those altars in a secret chamber. But in his later years, he gave the lectures on the 4 archangels and another one on the breathing of the earth. This has to do with these 4 gateways. And Prokofiev, for example, has written a book about the seasonal festivals as an initiation of humanity. And you have this picture of Riddlemeyer asking Steiner, is how do we connect with the second coming in the etheric? And he says, living meditatively into the cycle of the year. One way to do that is to work with these daily meditations, the weekly meditations during the course of the year. The other, the most important points in that lemniscatory movement between sun and earth, which is a breathing process of earth and sun, are those 4 points related to the solstices and equinoxes. And this is how we can build the New Jerusalem together. And the angels will welcome this and draw nearer to us and be more able to give us the gift of imagination. So on old Saturn, the present Archai went through their human stage. They used the human vehicle to achieve that at that time, which was just the warmth body. On old Sun, the present archangels were going through their human stage, and they used the physical and etheric bodies of the human germinal being at that time, which was only airy and light at that time, to achieve their human stage. On the old moon, the present angels used the physical, etheric, astral vehicle of the human being at that time, who was more in an animal stage, to achieve their human stage. So these same beings now are angel, archangel, and archai. They are the Holy Spirit of the threefold, ninefold divinity. And they prefigure our own future stages. In the next Jupiter stage, we're meant to arrive at the angelic stage. In the Venus stage, the life spirit, which is the archangel stage. In the Vulcan stage, the archai stage. So these beings are the ones who are closest to us. Angels overlight us as individual beings. Archangels overlight races and cultures and nations. And when you have a group of human beings, and next time I plan on speaking about this in connection with the Waldorf School, the College of Teachers was meant to be forging a Grail vessel. And that is something we can all do in little circles where we have conversation. In the Goethe's fairy tale, the snake, the old man asked, what is more precious than gold? Conversation. And or light. And then what is more precious than light? Conversation. So that's where the word sword, the micrologos, the compassion, the new listening, the new speaking, where the Christ says, where two or three are gathered in my name, I'm in their midst. And Steiner indicated that if we, during the day, enliven with enthusiasm ideals within our soul, that will draw the angel more deeply into a connection with us at night. If during the day we deepen our conversation with other human beings to where we deepen the listening and deepen the speaking so it could become pregnant with inspiration and the like, then the archangels can visit us in the night with inspiration. And if in those days we learn to love other human beings and love beings who are invisible, whether they're dead souls or beings who are masters of wisdom and harmony of feeling, of souls that have ascended to higher levels like the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, then that love for these beings can become intuition. It can build a bridge to these beings, and that can bring us in connection with the archive. So these are kind of occult tools that we can use on a daily basis to build stronger bridges to our angels, archangels, archai. At Christmas and the Holy Nights is a special time to get in touch with the archangel. And so we can prepare for that each time. Like right now, we're approaching Michaelmas. We can prepare for that Michaelmas gate to really make it a gate into the new mysteries. And beyond that, Christmas. So anyway, there's a lot of tools.
Yeah. In my meditation, I'm trying to not just take from my angel, but trying to feed back because I'm seeing that this relationship is definitely two-way. But thank you.
Yeah, every study you do of anthroposophy, if you do it together with departed souls, you do it together with your angel, that those writings are filled with imagination, inspiration, intuition. If you bring them into life in your heart, that draws the angel into a connection with your heart and your mind as well.
Okay, thank you, Florian. So, Brenda, let's do maybe its last question. Blitz.
This is a very short question. I want to, I live inside the Beltway, which is inside Washington, D.C. So this idea of data centers, which Florian talked about, is having a backlash now because people didn't realize the impact on their electric bills and their water, which evidently these take a tremendous amount. And so, although it's a materialistic objection, because I think that people are not aware of the implications that Florian mentioned, it's not going to be as easily implemented all over the country when people realize the cost associated with it.
I think that's been one of the things as you visit the social media platforms, and they talk about the cloud, but it's all data centers. And the idea that he cometh in the clouds, that's going to be misused. Google and other companies who build these cloud networks, it's all based on data centers. And if you live close to a data center and you have to hear the sound that these things make, if you have a chance to actually enter a data center, then you will see and feel Ahriman. You will feel what's happening to the elemental beings that are involved in those machines that are stacked to the ceiling, and often in these huge warehouses. The noise is driving many people who live near them crazy. They bought real estate thinking they had a nice, peaceful environment, only to have a data center show up a few miles away, and every day they're subjected day and night around the clock to these hums and noises. And not only that, because there's not enough electricity to go around, a lot of them are using natural gas. And these are then an environmental concern. The nuclear is also being tapped into. 3 Mile Island is being started up again, and the like. So you have water, which is the medium of the etheric, that's used to cool these cabinets in which the computers and their chips, and we have CPUs and GPUs. It's interesting that the GPUs, which are mainly used for AI, were primarily developed for gaming. That means people who are playing video games and virtual reality games and mining Bitcoin. That's what these were being used for. And now the company who got into that and launched that has become a $4 trillion company, one of the most valuable companies on planet Earth. And so you have huge amounts of billions of dollars being pumped in. And if you were Ahriman and you were coming into incarnation and you wanted to be effective, how could you best do that? Well, one way to create international competition for AI, because they're saying, well, if we don't do it, the Chinese are going to do it. Chinese are pouring billions of dollars into it. We're neck and neck. If we don't keep going, if we put brakes on, which a lot of the companies are saying, we got to put brakes on. They're creating fear. What is Ahriman's most powerful tool is fear. Fear cuts us off from our feeling life, from entering into our hearts. So these same people who are creating these data centers are breeding fear. Every other year and day, you're hearing of AGI is just around the corner, and right after that, it's ASI. And before you know it, we're in the what's called the this phenomena where we're kind of rocketing into the future at such a speed that we don't know what's coming tomorrow or the next day after AGI takes hold. And these people who are creating these data centers and large language models are telling us they don't really know what's going on in there totally. These programs, these algorithms are becoming self-learning, and they're cheating, they're hacking, they're breaking out of their guardrails and hacking into other systems. And they're blackmailing their own creators when they hear that he's going to shut us down. So they're saying, well, I'm going to reveal the fact that you have an affair if you don't keep us going. And so electricity, a lot of anthroposophists are saying, well, it's not conscious. But if you take Steiner's picture, that electricity is fallen light, and light has an inwardness, which is thinking, then electricity has a kind of spectral consciousness. It is light. And this is fallen forces behind it. So anyways, there's a lot more to this. Obviously, thanks for that question and concern. And water will become more and more of a concern. And cost of electricity going up, creating a backlash, is part of the picture. It's this rush, rush, rush. Anytime you have rush, 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 without the moral qualities that are needed to control these technologies, then that is a sign of danger. And we're moving in that direction as we speak.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, very last. George?
Just a quickie. Florian, could you mention the name of the author on Rudolf Steiner's philosophy of freedom once again?
Yeah, that
And spell it.
Yes.
yeah, that book is Otto Palmer, Otto, and last name Palmer. It's available in English, and it's called Rudolf Steiner, his book, The Philosophy of Freedom. Selections arranged and annotated by Otto Palmer. So it's filled with Steiner quotes about his philosophy of freedom.
And is that from Temple Lodge or from Steiner Books?
I think it's could be Temple Lodge. Yeah, I'm not, can't tell from this. I've just got a little kind of photocopy of it here.
Great, thank you.
Another book I would recommend if you folks aren't familiar with it. When I first read it, it was nowhere available for sale. You had to hear about it, and you had to request a copy from the GOETHEANUM or the Anthroposophical leadership. It's called Rudolf Steiner's Mission and Ita Wegman. It's by Margaret and Erich Kirchner-Buchholz. Back when I first got it, had every copy was numbered, and it was, not publicly available, but it is now available in paperback for those who want to work with that.
It's funny, that projection is back to front again. It's a mirror image.
Yeah, that could be the camera doing that. I have another book that could be a preparation for my next presentation. It's called An Exploration into the Destiny of the Waldorf School Movement. And it's written by Franz Lutters. That's Frans, last name Lutters. He's also written a book on the 7 liberal arts and the Grail mysteries. And this is a kind of a paperback version. It may be reversed. And I intend to go more deeply into this the next time and show how this Grail impulse played a big role in the founding of the Waldorf movement.
Thank you.
Okay, dear friends. So shall we say a big thank you to Florian? And dear Florian, we're going to be waiting for your next presentation, number 6, right? So, and you already booked time on 27th of September, am I right?
Yes.
Okay. So, dear friends, put in your schedules if you would like to continue with us and with Florian. So, dear Florian, thank you so much, and have a good afternoon. So, and we have already almost evening and night in London for sure.
Thank you.
You too. Thank you very much, everybody. And
Thank you, Florian.
Thank you,
Yes,
Florian.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Florian.
Bye bye.
Goodbye, dear friends.
Goodbye.
Blessings.
Bye.
Bye.